on to the virtual comments. We have a comment from Miss Carol Reynoso of Dearborn. Says, my 3 children attend Etzel Ford High School. Etzel Ford has many quality teachers. However, as of late, these teachers are leaving the district to work in other districts or retire before the year has ended. In the last month, my children have lost 3 very strong teachers. By next week, my 10th grade twins will have subs for Algebra 2, Spanish 2, and ELA. I'm concerned that their education is compromised with the lack of teachers. I work in education and I'm aware of the service teacher shortage. However, my concern here is that the district is not retaining the quality teachers that they already have. I asked the board to ask, why is this happening? Is administration listening to teachers to inquire why they are leaving in the middle of the year? My children are very upset that they are losing their best teachers, and I am questioning as a parent what is going on that staff do not want to stay. Etzel Ford lost a very strong administrator last year to another district, as well as their entire administrative team, and my fear is that the strong teaching staff are following. I plan to follow up this comment with emails to the board and the administration and the superintendent. I truly question if central office and building administration are listening and addressing the concerns of the teachers. Teachers will stay if they feel valued and supported. Please look into why staff are wanting to leave Dearborn. If we truly put students first, we will take care of our teachers. Our children deserve the best, and they shouldn't have to watch them leave. Mrs. Diana Goodhue of Livonia said, good evening. I'm writing today to spotlight our teachers here in Dearborn. I want to commend my fellow educators who are here every day putting students first. With the tragic events last week that I have watched, our teachers show up for our kids every single day. They have eased fears, listened to students and their parents, all while dealing with their own concerns. This is what teachers do. I wanted to make sure to publicly recognize my coworkers who are facing this all head on, from comforting students to completing ALICE trainings. My hope is that the board will do the same. Mrs. Monica Hankins of Trenton said, on behalf of the DPS staff, I would like to ask why we were sent a 40-minute video to watch on our time regarding ALICE training. We do not understand why the district did not mandate this to be watched at a staff meeting or late start, or better yet, call a full or even half day like other districts and properly train us on how we can be better prepared for an intruder incident. This should be much more important and a priority after the tragic, devastating, and heartbreaking incident in Oxford. We all know that nothing will truly prepare you for such an incident. However, we are asking the district to truly train us in this type of emergency, ASAP, so that staff can practice and be better prepared. Mr. Stephen Martin of Dearborn says, a while ago, the 3 things to watch were the positivity rate. I believe it's skyrocketing. Hospital beds, I believe that they are pretty much at capacity. What other districts are doing, I believe other DB area schools went virtual last week. So are you just going to ignore these now? The lack of concern is concerning as more and more teachers quit. Would the students learn more virtual with the teacher or come to schools and have 4 subs a day? Ms. Linda Bale said, I'm concerned about the safety of our children and teachers, especially after the experience in Dearborn High School today. There was a total chaos and a free-for-all at DHS today once students and parents felt uncomfortable due to the rumors of a possible threat. I realized that the Dearborn police were present, however, they were not all able to handle the exit of these students in an orderly manner. As demonstrated today, had this been a real incident, it is clear that our schools are not as prepared as the superintendent has been preaching on social media. To adequately train the teachers, they need in-person training that specifically addresses their actual classroom school setup to learn how to react and keep the students and themselves safe and orderly. Many of the neighboring school districts are closing so that teachers can attend in-person training specific to their environment. Generic virtual training does not provide realistic scenarios that apply to our varying school layouts. I would like the board to specifically address how teachers will be trained. This is a serious matter. The principal should be in immediate and continuous contact with the staff so they are aware of the situation and the appropriate steps to take. The teachers should not have to rely on the students to inform them of the situation based on what they saw on social media. The board and administration need to be held accountable to ensure that students and teachers are actually prepared to react to these situations. Also, what action is the administration doing to alleviate the mental drain and added stress on the students and teachers to allow them to process and cope with these events? How can the students learn and the teachers be effective if the basic emotional needs are not being met? And that was the last comment, Mr. President.
So there were, 3 or 4 different comments about, I'm going to say Alice, something related to Alice. So I wanted to bring Mr. Leacher back up to be able to address some of the comments and explain it a little bit more.
So the Alice protocol, is part of what's included in our emergency operations plan, which has been updated this year. It aligns with the police department's response as a whole to a serious incident at any one of our schools. As stated earlier, there are multiple officers in the Dearborn Police Department that are trained Alice instructors, and that is part of our plan moving forward to get all of them on board to assist us with doing the type of in-person training mentioned in some of the comments, as well as the tabletops I mentioned earlier. The SROs that are trained in this protocol will be side by side with us every step of the way.
I just want to mention too, our training is multi-fold, meaning the videos are valuable, but you have in person, you use all of it. You have technology as well, and then the advantage to the technology is you can always go back and review. So you'll have some of the tabletop or district level, but the teams at the buildings, and I can speak as a former building principal, and I spoke to the administrators last week, are the most critical. So you want those conversations, and what we told the administrators is we want to continue to revamp those crisis teams. They're supposed to be meeting monthly, is what you're gonna hear at the building level. And then those teams will also be providing information or training or updates to staff during regular staff meetings. So you really wanna have a multifold approach. I will say when we did the ADD, we had the same thing. We had a couple of videos, but the videos are helpful when you're implementing because you see the model and then you're able to bring them in. The advantage we have is with the SRO officers, they will go in and they've done this before. And I know, for example, before the COVID hit, they were doing that at some of the high schools where they were actually with the staff doing the training hand in hand. At that time, though, we had ADD that we've now since switched to ALS.
Trustee Moses?
Yeah, I would like to thank all of the speakers who spoke today, especially the students. And Dr. Maliko, I would like to even go further what the student mentioned about her father going into the school unattended or not being able to be buzzed in. I think that's a huge concern that I'd like to raise and possibly look into. I know I've been to Etzel Ford multiple times prior to COVID and even during COVID, and each time I was greeted with a security officer that would ask me to go to the main office. So, obviously, I'm not sure what happened in that incident, but I do expect our schools to now have that technology where they're being buzzed in, where a staff member would see them on camera prior to them entering. So obviously, we're talking about these things as reactive things. And we need to even look further into, obviously, the emotional side, bullying that has been an area of concern. Obviously, what happened in Oxford is not an intruder, but rather a student who is attending that school. And there were warning signs, right? So I know one of the speakers mentioned that we're saying that, some of the things that we've received and we said they're not a threat. It's because they were highly investigated. It's not saying it's a joke. However, those things are definitely with the law enforcement's. There is currently, Wayne County prosecutor has mentioned this multiple times, that if you do make a threat, it is a felony by the state of Michigan statute, that you will be charged if you are convicted. So it is a serious crime, and everybody needs to really talk about this to their, especially teenage children, about the importance of not making those empty, even if jokingly. Those are very serious matters, and the district will take any threats seriously. So just the last comment on Alice. Again, I hope those will be in person, that our teachers and administrators will be able to ask questions about the trainings and that apply to their situation. Thank you.
Trustee Petlicoff.
Okay, I've got one question for Mr. Leacher, and then I've got a follow-up on Trustee Moses. Are the videos when they were distributed throughout the staff, I assume, was it captioned as a voluntary watching of it, or was it a mandatory?
The watching the video, I wanted to put out as being mandatory. My understanding is that it was. This is essential to being able to understand how each building emergency operation plan is going to work within the framework of the district emergency operation plan. And in order to understand that protocol, the Alice protocol, that video was
They
vital.
have to get the starting
Absolutely, yes.
We
footprint.
have several other mandatory trainings online that I think you're aware of. So we're
Right.
also trying to balance all of them because it's a lot on.
So this is not the only mandatory video
Correct.
we've sent out before, where I'm assuming it's always been, you do it in, at home or would you have a, half a day or a late start day and use it for everybody in the building? Is it up to the administration to,
Yeah, and those conversations we're having with administrators, that you would do some of that, like we did back in 2019 with the buildings, where you would go over that information in person, but then you would still have it available to you to watch.
To follow
and
it, right.
access. So,
yeah,
whether or not, and that's, each building is a little different, but we asked the crisis team to look at the information.
and how
then
they
to
want
bring-
to
yeah. So,
ensure
and
that
again,
everybody
we're
sees
still
it.
just, Alice is something new.
Right.
We switched from ADD, so, but the protocols have been in place for a long time as far as emergency planning.
Right. And to follow up with Trustee Moses as to some of the comments that were made earlier about the wording of may and possibly charge, that we do not do any charging. That belongs in the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office. We have absolutely no authority to charge any of these students with anything. The wording is such because we don't have any control over it. It's not our authority to move forward with it. All we can do is what our district allows of up to expulsion, suspension, expulsion protocols. But charging any of these students with any kind of a crime is not, we have no ability to do that. And that's why that wording exists. Legally, we don't have any authority.
Mr. Leacher, you had mentioned earlier that the video was kind of the first step in the training, correct?
That's correct, yes. Excuse me.
All right, and you said that the process is moving along. How long do you think it'll take until people the whole district is familiar with the ALICE program?
The video's a very good start to that. That should familiarize our staff with how the protocol works. Excuse me. So moving forward, as soon as I get word from the Dearborn Police Department that they have no issues with our plan, our district-wide plan as it stands, then the templates will be pushed out to each of the buildings to then fill in and familiarize themselves with their individual plans, which again the template is the same as the district plan with the exception of some very, very minor points, but very essential to individual buildings, like who's on your crisis team, where is your reunification points, things like that has to be filled in by building. Once each building has an opportunity to review their plan, get together with their crisis team to review it. Then my goal is to get into those buildings and begin doing tabletops. That's where the SROs come in, and that's where we start having some of that face-to-face contact that Trustee Moses was talking about that he thinks is most important. And that, again, then we'll build off of that right into the building level exercises where we'll start exercising the actual drills of how the ALICE protocol works with staff, without students in the building, with staff. They can take that training then to their students in individual classrooms. Then we build from a individual building exercise to a large-scale exercise where we bring in first responders, and it's mapped out and it's scripted and it's a long, it's a multiple hour event as opposed to maybe a half hour, 45-minute or an hour training before school starts. So that's how the process is going to build, and we're working towards that as quickly as possible.
Do you have a goal or a timeline as to when you'll get to that part?
To the full-scale exercise? Ideally, next school year, before the end of this school year, I would like to have tabletops done with every building.
Okay, all right. One other thing while you're still here is, it was also brought up about special needs students. Are there different protocols in place for our special needs classrooms?
So that is something that we'll work through as we exercise the plans, but is also something that we look at as far as like risk and needs assessments that we do with our insurance carriers. Mazel has our representative. I have an appointment with her the beginning. I think it's next week, and we're actually going to be talking about those very types of scenarios in an emergency situation, an evacuation situation. What's our best course of action to make sure that our special needs students are taken care of. So that's another layer that we're looking into as well.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Leacher while he's up here? Trustee Watts?
So going back to the students with special needs, is there, for instance, we heard from the mom that says she likes to reinforce what he's learning at school. Is that something that they can do at home and also have that discussion, or is that something that we can't share at home? I'm just wondering how we can make sure that we reinforce that at home as well to let the parents know.
So it is my understanding that as we exercise these the different phases of the protocol, and then we start introducing it to our students in the classrooms, that we would encourage staff to encourage their students to talk about that at home, to talk to mom and dad about it, to go over things and let mom and dad ask questions and make sure that they understand, not just through instruction in school, but also through relaying that at home. So yeah, I'm sure that is part of what is included in the educational part of the program for the students.
Thank you.
Trustee Petlicoff?
And you said that you didn't think the full implementation of ALICE with the live drills and whatever wouldn't take until the following school year. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be much comfort to the parents today. I have a feeling that, especially in the immediacy of the moment of what's been occurring and the fears that we hear from everyone, that I'm telling them that we'll get to it. I understand that there's a certain amount of time you need to have this play out, but we need to give them something now that they feel that we are doing actively to protect their students in the buildings, that we can demonstrate is a reliable way to serve the school community. What else do we have to offer?
So Dr. Maleko touched on it earlier, so there are multiple drills throughout the year that cover evacuation, that cover lockdown, that cover the scenarios that are going to be enhanced through the ALICE program. But to say that we're not exercising, we're not giving anything
You
to our
need
students.
But we need to clarify, because when you said what you said, the way it was said, it could be misinterpreted that nothing else is going to be happening.
No, and
in
I
the
appreciate the
interim.
opportunity to clarify that, but a large-scale exercise where we're bringing in police department, fire department, those types of things to build up to that level of an exercise, I think is not gonna happen until next year. As far as exercising with our kids in the classroom, that's happening already.
Right, and make sure that we have to reinforce that we are actively involved in those kinds of drills on a regular basis.
Sure.
And if there's anything else that you may think would be helpful that we could do to help secure those buildings in one fashion or another that we're missing that could be implemented in a more immediate fashion, please come to us again. I don't care if it's a special kind of bar to put in the door, which we saw during some of the past school shootings that they were using to secure the doors, or window coverings, or a better look at what the security guards are doing at our building entryways. We need to know that we are proactively secure without making it a fortress, without making the students feel like they're walking into a prison.
Yeah.
But we
Sure.
need to make sure that we are doing whatever we can as quickly as we can to help make everyone feel more secure in their school environment. And then, of course, we've hired, what, 50? We have, what I saw, 50 school counselors now? Or somewhere around that. The mental health issue is a big component
Social-
of how we
increase
move
in social
forward in addressing
workers, yeah.
issues with those students who we need to capture before they get to that level of distress that they bring a gun into the building.
Trustee Moser.
Yeah, just also on another comment about transparency, I do believe I've followed the threats at Etzel, and as my colleagues as well did, and at Dearborn, and both principals have been very proactive in alerting parents of what's going on, and they submitted blogs instantly the same day, and emails letting parents know about the situation. Immediate situations, I know there was a comment online that was talking about chaotic environment when that threat came to be about and students started cheering around. That does happen, and I hope that we learn as an entire district is that we take lessons learned of these situations that now that they're happening instantly. The last thing that I'd like to say, looking at many school shootings, and fortunately, God forbid this happens in our cities or for that matter anywhere, most of the time when all is done, they look into it, it's mostly the vigilance of folks, administrators, teachers, staff, and students who usually report, and the time of the essence. Those are the two most important things. We can talk about technology, talk about preventive things that we can do to prevent those actions, but it comes down to the human nature of catching this early on. If there is a person who is in distress, how do we help that person? And also, if there is an intruder, how that intruder is being stopped before they take any lives or make any damage. So, obviously, this is not going to be solved in one day, or for that matter, for the entire country. But we definitely in Dearborn have to be the leader in making sure that our students are sent to learn. That they should not be thinking, hey, is there going to be a shooting in my school today or in my district today? That's not what they're supposed to be thinking. They're supposed to be focusing with their teachers, and the teachers also have to be thinking about how can I make this learning environment even better for the students, and not thinking about how do I secure and do an ALICE training. That should be the last thought for them. So But we have to be ready. Fortunately, you know, watching over these, we definitely have to be prepared, and it's very unfortunate. Thank you.
Trustee McDonald?
Part of the purpose of the large-scale exercise, and I just wanted you to reiterate on this, is to bring together all the tabletop exercises and everything else that's taken place throughout the way, to make sure that it's working correctly and there aren't any snafus, there aren't any bugs, anything that's unforeseen that wasn't done here, we will learn in those scenarios, which will bring it all together and make it work even better. So I just,
Yes, you are spot on with that. That is exactly the process. And at each level, you're testing your emergency operation plan. That final large-scale exercise is to bring everybody in that could participate, right? EMS, fire, police, and then they get to put their 2 cents worth in too, right? Because we exercise that at a large-scale event, and then we would debrief, and the debrief is most important. It's like after anything important is you as a board sit down and talk about things that happen. So big events, you sit down, you debrief, you find out, it's not just a time to pat yourself on the back and say, hey, that was great, everything went so perfect. As you sit down and you say, what did we mess up? And that's not being harsh. That's just being, because we want to do better, right? Every single time we do something, we want to get better. We want to perfect it, or that's what we're aspiring for, is perfection, right? So every time you exercise it, the idea is to figure out where can we make it better, and the only way to do that is identify where you made a mistake, or where you missed something, and every level builds up to that. Yes.
no, just a couple other things I want to add. One of the things that I've done in research over the years, I've read a lot about like magnetic doors that automatically close and things like that. Do we have any of those in place, or do you foresee a need for anything such as that in our buildings?
I think these are all things as we move forward with, again, as we sit down and we talk to each individual building about their plan, about exercising their plan. I hate to keep going back to that, but I mean, it really does all kind of focus on that, is what things do you identify at each individual building that the administration and their team has identified as needs, and that can be taken back, and that we can look at that and determine, how to address those needs and what the priority is through the board.
And the last thing I want to say is just about students that do make these calls. They are taken absolutely serious, and it's not up to us whether something is charged, like Trustee Petchlikov said. But I just want them to consider, not only are you terrorizing the folks that you go to school with, and the people in your buildings, and the people in your neighborhood, and you could get charged for something criminal, but this could also affect the rest of your life for years and years and years in negative ways that you can't even imagine. And you think that this is, you may consider it a joke, or I was just, you have no idea how this will affect you for the rest of your life and how it affects those around you. I just wanted to put that out there. We talk about the parents and other people. If you see something, say something. If but the person that thinks about doing this, you just have to really, really think how this will affect your life without question in ways you can't imagine, even if it is not a credible threat.
So I just wanted to mention, just to reiterate, the training has been going on for years, okay? So this is nothing new. After Columbine, the lockdown started. Now what's happened is it's changed as new techniques have come in. So we've been doing this for years, but now we're moving to a more current training with the Alice. But it will happen within the buildings, it will happen all the time, and it'll be constantly renewed, President Thorpe. So it's like it'll never stop, really. It'll constantly be renewed every year as you get new staff. So it'll be ongoing all the time. The major exercise, just so that to help clarify a little, because John wasn't here and we did them, we did the one at William Ford and we did one at Smith. They were major exercise, not so much for our staff, but more for the law enforcement, first responders to come in. That's who wanted to get in during an active shooter. They did a bomb threat. It's more for the law enforcement agencies. The stuff with our employees we're doing on a regular routine basis all the time. Thank you.
Trustee Watts?
So just a few things. So currently, our teachers are using ADD. Is that the current method that they have been trained in, or our buildings are using ADD. and
That's
we're-
my understanding,
And we're
yes.
pivoting to Alice.
Correct.
So currently we have in place ADD. So then the second thing is, and I think what trustee Petchikoff had said, is that is there anything that we can do in terms of maybe doing an internal audit or something that at the building level that we can prioritize and say, what can we do right now since we're pivoting from ADD to Alice, for instance, like the special needs classroom? Is there anything that we could do on that door in the next day or two that would say, okay, well, we can't do the training for these students right now, but what we can do is add this door lock? Is there something, because since they haven't had that necessarily that training like the other classrooms have had, and this way that would put some fear at ease?
That's a great question, but I don't know if they've had any of that other training. All I know is that what we're doing moving forward. So, I mean, I could talk with Mike Asaley, I guess, Dr. Maleko,
Yeah, and Mike talked
determine-
about that, so for the special ed students, he's reviewing currently the Alice and seeing how it will fit into place. He
And I'm
actually-
just wondering if the audit could do like a priority, like when we have the infrastructure, we have a priority 1, 2, 3. Is there something that we could say, okay, you know what, this is a priority and we can go ahead and address it sooner than later?
I mean, I would just say that we're moving very fast with this now. During the COVID protocols were in the forefront.
Yes.
And for most of the year, we weren't in the building. So that's the reality, just like the interlocal agreement, we kind of put that on hold because we weren't in the buildings. Now we're back, and the whole launch of that was to get it moving. But I'll say that we're gonna be launching it heavily, but we don't want to stress out staff and students because it will take time. But a transition from ADD to the Alice is very similar. I don't
was
really
gonna say,
see a
they're
major.
pretty- yeah, they're pretty
I don't
similar
really see a major
protocols,
problem
yeah.
with it. It's just more of continuing to enhance. And the fact that our SROs are heavily trained in the Alice. So I don't really see a major problem, but I rely on Mike for the special.
Yeah, so for special needs, I do want to just clarify some things. We do practice different drills and different things along those lines with our students with whatever disability it is. Now, it's going to look different how we practice it sometimes in an autism classroom or sometimes with students with physical impairments. Real quickly, students with autism, some things that typically work is, now, we know in a real life situation, you're not going to be able to forewarn them, but we do try to forewarn them. We try to train them with things like social stories and things along those lines to help prepare them in case there is a specific incident that were to happen. Now, for all of our students with physical impairments, typically we have evacuation plans for them as well. And staff is also notified on specific evacuation plans as well, just in the case that there is an emergency or we do have to evacuate a student rather quickly. Now, with that being said, I think John over here kind of stated it well a little bit earlier, is we are also reaching out to Alice and other organizations as well to see what more can we do for all of our students to ensure that there is safety when it does come down to any incident, God forbid, that may happen or may occur. With that said, I think our teachers, our social workers, our staff, whenever we do have drills, they do a nice job trying to prepare our students to the best of their ability. And are there things that we can continue to improve on or continue to get better on? Absolutely. But those are things we're definitely committed to.
Thank you very much.